with comedian David Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. If you can hear some drunk cunts in the background, that's because I am podcasting directly from John Doe's car. I'm across the road from a pub, and it looks like they're getting fucking lit tonight. So I just got back from a big fucking day podcasting, did a potty with my man Johnny Katz out there, then had a gig. The gig went good, then got invited to a fucking party for like the end of festival party, but couldn't go because I had to go back and do this. I could have fucking networked. I could have just gone up to comics I hate and said, hey, I love your comedy. You are hilarious. I tell you what I love, your comedy. That's how you network in comedy. You just say, hey, I love your comedy. And you try and say it in a way that they'll believe you. Don't roll your eyes. Don't fucking say it in a sneering voice. I tell you what I love. Yeah, your comedy. So I had to ditch that. I actually did want to go to that party. A few comedians I haven't seen in a while were going to be there. But I have bigger responsibilities. This podcast needs to go out. This podcast is bigger than a party. This podcast is bigger than me. No, if I went to the party, I wouldn't have had fucking time to do this potty, and I need to get a good sleep for the show tomorrow. So I'm not fucking all over the shop. I'm fucking wheezing a lot too. There's just this constant wheeze in my chest. I'm getting paranoid it's my little tiny incy-wincy bit of fucking emphysema, but I think it's something else, and it's in my right lung now. It was in my left, which is the lung that was just a tiny little bit damaged after 20 years of chain smoking and DMT smoking. Throw a little bit of fucking ice in there too. You know, like, it's not that much damage for the damage I was doing. But it's jumped over to my right lung now, so I think it's something else. It's not COVID either. I don't get COVID. That's my superpower. I just don't get COVID, no matter what. Unless I've just always got COVID. That's also a possibility. I've had COVID so many times that it just doesn't affect me anymore. But I have been a little bit concerned with the wheezing in my lungs. I couldn't sleep at all last night. I was waking up like every 15 minutes. At one point, fucking John Doe goes, "Oi, Boyle, sort your fucking breathing out. You got to do something about your breathing, mate." I'm like, I don't know what I'm meant to do about it. I'm trying to breathe through my nose, but it's blocked. So I'm breathing through my mouth like the fucking village idiot. And I've got a wheeze in my lung. And he's just like, sort it out. This is at like 4:30 a.m., a very sad slumber party. But I have been a little bit concerned with the old lungs. I spoke to a comedian friend of mine, Matt O'Neill, and he said, don't worry about it. I told him the doctor just found a tiny, tiny little bit of fucking emphysema. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. You can fix that. My dad and my uncle had emphysema, and my dad quit smoking, and he's got no emphysema anymore, and my uncle kept smoking, and he's about to die. I tell you what, a couple of darts would clear the wheeze out. That usually works. It's like a fucking bogan Ventolin. Although fucking cigarettes are out of control in Australia now. A cheap packet of fucking 20s now is $45. That's not like the Marlboro Lights and shit like that. That shit's like $55. The cheap fucking 100% will give you cancer after 10 packs. That shit's $45 for 20. I feel sorry for the younger generation not being able to dart. They're fucking missing out. How are the kids going to scrape together enough money to buy a pack of darts now? They're just going to have to go around the street picking up butts like homeless people. It's a fucking sad state of affairs. Anyway, let's not fucking lose too much sleep over that because it is Friday and you know what that means. It's time for this week's Fucked Up Friday. So if you have a story, a fucking banger that you fucking tell at parties and everyone's like, wow, I want to suck this cunt's dick, or wow, I want to go down on this girl, then send it on through. Go to my website, boylecomedy.com. There's a section there for the Fucked Up Friday stories. You'll find it once you get to the website. Send it through to be in the running to get read out on this podcast. If you're a supporter of the podcast, a member of the Patreon, it's just $1 a month. Send your story through the Patreon. You can skip the line. You can overtake the tight cunts. That's how capitalism works. Money talks and bullshit walks. But don't just join the Patreon to fucking get your story on. Join the Patreon. If you enjoy the podcast, you get something out of it, you appreciate it, and you want to support Boyle. Because the Patreon is keeping me out of a fucking crane at the moment. Only just. And I need more of you signing up than leaving every month. It's a very fucking delicate balance. Anyway, the links to the Patreon are on my website, boylecomedy.com. Just go there, do it. So anyway, let's get to this week's Fucked Up Friday. So this week's Fucked Up Friday, it's an Australian story, this one. This was sent in by Clive from Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. It's a shithole next to some water, so it looks nice to the eye, but there's a fucking dark underbelly to Newey. Anyway, let's get to Clive from Newey's fucking story. I was in my mid-20s and had planned to go to a local rugby league game with a more sensible mate than me that night. I decided to get on the sauce around lunchtime. That's the perfect time to start drinking when you go into the footy. Either lunchtime or breakfast. I lived in a rental near the bay with a balcony sporting bay views. As I do, I started rocking some beats, pumping them out from my balcony whilst hammering the beers and smoking darts. The missus was at work for the day, and that's lucky because she knows what I'm like when I get onto a good day drink. And let's just say she'd be chewing some ears off and spitting them out if she was around. I did my usual caper, filled up a 600ml bottle of Coke with bourbon and a touch of Coca-Cola, and drank it on the way. The bus driver was none the wiser. When the ride was done, I started drinking at a sports bar, and I ended up leaving that place and going into a shitty pub around the corner, where there was some 45-year-oldish woman who I'd seen around the place doing the rounds. I'd seen her a handful of times, always on the booze and latching on to some middle-aged degenerate. We got to talking. She's found another one. She's got her hooks in. We got to talking across tables, and a few drinks later, she was all over me. At my table, heavily sun-kissed, tits in my face, she hit me up for a durry. Alright, for the international listeners, a durry is just a dart. It's a less classy way of saying dart. Do you have a duz, mate? Do you have a durry? You got any durries? It's probably the least classy and most Australian way of saying cigarette. Durry is good. I love saying durry and does, but I'm a dart man. Fucking, do you have a dart? Fucking, do you have any dozzes? Actually, I love durry too. I'm torn. Anyway, so she hit me up for a durry and I asked her if she was the pub slut. She didn't like that, even though it was true. Fucking what a stuck-up bitch. She started howling and trying to attack me, and I had to keep jumping back to avoid this mad bitch's swings. A couple of people managed to restrain her, but not before she lashed out with her foot and collected my left nut on the toe of her pointy shoe. Let's just say I left there with a dull ache and my tail between my legs as I was ready to meet my mate at another pub prior to kick off. We carried on drinking, but he was only beginning while I was at least 12 drinks in, and a short while later we got to the match. It was the Knights match, the fucking Newcastle Knights. I kept drinking throughout the first half, and at halftime I went for a piss and then on to the bar. I was walking up to the bar and saw my mate in line. I joined him, and some fucking tool behind me took issue with that. He said I was pushing in and cutting in line. I told him that's not the case. I'm just joining my mate, and I'm not buying a drink. My mate who was in line will simply get one for me. He continued carrying on like the fucking cock he was, saying that I need to get to the back of the line. I was like, listen here, cunt. I can stand here with my mate, or I can get out of line and go back to my seat. You're not getting your drink served any faster. Which is true. He kept on bitching and moaning, and eventually security caught on to our exchange. He started pleading his case to them, and I told my side of the story. Well, I was slurring, and they took me aside and were talking to me at the edge of the bar. Another mate I met at the game was going past and stopped to suss out the situation. While I was talking to the secco, which is security guard, I put my hand on his shoulder, and he seemed cool with that. Later, I'd be told by my mate that the second secco was on his walkie-talkie saying I was getting physical. Next thing I know, I have 4 of these fucking seccos around me saying it's time to leave. Okay, I comply, and I'm walking with them, still telling my side of the story. I wasn't cutting in. My mate was getting me a beer anyway. Well, they were all nodding and understanding until we got around the corner. I'd been handed my plastic cup of beer during the exchange at the bar, and once we were around the corner and in the dark, one of them snatched my beer, crushed it in his ham-sized fist like it was a piece of fucking origami. Another shoved my head back while one twisted my fucking arm around my back like it was made of plasticine. Then they hauled me down to the gate while I was kicking and bucking like a strung-up dog, and they turfed me out like a piece of shit. I turned around and called them a bunch of dogs and gutless wankers. You fucking dogs. You fucking gutless wankers. Yeah, come out here and see how tough you are, you fucking dogs. You fucking gutless wonders. Gutless wonder is like the least offensive thing to say. I think it's very Australian. You fucking gutless wonder. Yeah, I'm cool with that. Whatever. Gutless wonder. Gives a shit. Oh, he said gutless wankers. Ha gutless wankers, but they just turned their back on me and went back in. Anyway, my arm hurt for weeks and I don't think I ever fully recovered from it. Anyways, I was in a blind, drunken haze. I feasted at the nearby Macca's where the kids' staff looked terrified serving me. I hardly remember ranting to the missus on the phone about how poorly I was treated. I met up with my mate after the game and we tried getting into a few places. He kept telling me to act sober before lining up, but I was denied entry into everywhere except a local bowling club, where I finished my night after spewing in the toilet and being promptly ejected by security after sparking up a ciggy in the pool room. The missus picked me up that night and we had an argument. I was so fucking wasted and don't remember it, but I feel like that cunt who started a scene in the bar line needed a good fucking left, right, good night. This was maybe 12 years ago, and though the warning signs and alarms were all there, I'm only just trying to pull myself together now. Well, that's a pretty fucking standard day at the footy. I feel like at least half the crowd at that stadium had a similar story. At least 2,000 of the crowd, especially if it was a fucking Newcastle game. Fucking 12 years ago, who would have been playing? Johnsy would have been retired. Kirk Gidley, Danny Badiris. Yeah, there would have been a lot of arrests. Anyway, thanks for sending in the fucking Australian day at the footy. That's it for tonight. If you're enjoying the podcast, give it a share around. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you the fuck later.